Oh yeah, Salakia, Salakia. We back, we back. What's good? What's good? You know, all praises to the Most High Son Yahweh Shai, right? We back at it. We're gonna pick up where we left off at. I have to grab my son off the bus. Um, but yes, let's let's go. You can start back at 38, right? So 13 and 38, Matthew 13:38. So it says, "The field is the world, and the good seed is the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the wicked ones," right? So we already went through that, right? And that's like I said, these other nations that ended up, you know, producing children with within our people or within our through our women, right? Those would be the tares. And it says the enemy that sowed them is the devil, right? And they is the dang old devil. Let's get John 8:44 real quick. Yeah, John. So what people don't understand too is like Jesus is a nationalist. He's a everybody think that he's just this universal thing, right? But no, Jesus was a nationalist, right? He was for his people, right? He was a straight nationalist, right? Look at the people he rode with. They rode with zealots, right? A zealot is a extreme person, right? That's what we are. The covenant of zealots, right? Like Peter was a zealot, right? The the brothers of thunder, zealots, right? Meaning they would die for this stuff or kill, right? For this stuff, right? Zealots was a nationalist, right? That's what Judas was a zealous, a zealot. Who else? Simon Peter. All these people, right? They were nationalists, right? So we got to get this universal thought process of who this man was. We can read scriptures to see that he was about his people, right? And if he wasn't, because Rome was like only it was only one king, and that was Caesar, right? So if he was so assimilating into the Roman culture and trying to hug everybody and bring everybody together, why would the Romans kill him, right? He wouldn't be a threat to the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire during that time was killing leaders of rebellions that they felt that could be a threat to the Roman Empire or cause unrest. They was taking a hammer and a sledgehammer to a nail for every problem, right? They was quelling any type of uproar, right? So if he was how people just think it was just a straight universal type of bringing everybody in, they would have never killed him, right? So he says, John 8:44, and it says, "Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speak of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it," right? So that's how he felt about the ruling class of of our people, right? So and and like I said, they were put in place by the Romans, right? And so then, since they were following the Roman rule and trying to assimilate to Romans, and they're trying to, be all pristine, and because that's the main reason why they wanted to kill Christ, because they didn't want him to take their spot. They thought the people was gonna start looking more to Christ, more so to them for leadership, and then that's gonna make the Romans, like, well, maybe we should elevate Christ and put him in the seat, since the people is so it was envy, a lot of stuff going on, right? And it says, Revelation 14 and 15. Another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, thrust in thy sickle and reap, for the time come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. So again, the harvest, I already told you that the field is the earth, right? And the harvest is it's the end of the world, right? So where are we at? So then it says, therefore the tares are gathered and burnt in fire, so that it will be in the end of the world, right? So that's the judgment, right? Then it says, the Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offended them, and which do iniquity. So bring all these nations that ever wanted to try to come against the Israelites, that ever did harm to us, right? All these nations, bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, right? Bring them down to the valley, bring them all to the Middle East. Go ahead, Iraq and Israel. Bring in Russia, bring in China, right? Bring them in, bring them out, right? Go ahead, China. Go to Taiwan. Bring out America, right? Bring them out, right? Go ahead. Because that's what he's trying to do, get them to bring them out, right? And it says, the Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offended in them which do iniquity, right? Let's get Ezekiel 20 and 38. It says, I will purge out among you the rebels and them that transgress thee. I will bring them forth out of the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter the land of Israel, for ye shall know that I am the Yahweh, right? So it's going to be just like the days of old, like, because we say the second Exodus, right? So when we went over the Exodus story, right? So when we got to the desert, he had to kill that generation that came out of Egypt. We didn't enter into the promised land to the third, fourth generation, because those were still wicked people. Even though he took us out of Egypt, he kept that promise, right? But he couldn't bring those same people into the land, because they were still trying to live like they was Egyptian, right? So he had to bring the third, fourth generation into the land of Egypt. Only ones that were still from that first generation was Joshua and Caleb, right? But everybody else perished. It says, I will purge out from you among the rebels and them that transgress against me. I will bring them forth out the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Israel. So when he brings all these nations into the valley of Jehoshaphat, destroys them, right? And he gathered all of us, right? So, when these, missiles is dropping and stuff, he's gathering his people, taking us out of this place, right? So it's going to be some of us, although we done just seen this great miracle, we heard the sirens, we heard the alerts on the phone, nuclear destruction is coming to this city right here, right? You have X amount of time to get up out of town or do whatever you're going to do, right? We heard everybody panicking, going crazy, right? Sirens is going off. You probably even see the flash, right? You probably even seen the flash and heard the boom. You're like, oh, god dang, it's over with. But then, in the nick of time, right in that blink, zoop, zap, zip, bam, boom, zow, you out of here, right? So you see all of that. And now you sitting amongst the angels and the other Israelites that been gathered from around the world. You like, oh, dang, this is, but then you still so worldly that you don't even, like I said, you still not going to be able to make it into the promised land because you still want to be like Lot's wife and look back, right? Or, you still like how we were when we first came out of Egypt, like, oh man, it was better that we was at least in America, at least in America, it was this or that, we had football, we had basketball to watch, at least, in America we can do this, or at least we can do that. You're going to be one of those guys. The Most High, you're about to see the most greatest stuff ever, because the Bible says this Exodus that we about to experience, this second Exodus, is going to be talked about forever, right? We're not going to no longer talk about, we celebrate Passover and all that stuff, right? We celebrate Passover in remembrance of Exodus with Moses and everybody. But it tells us in Jeremiah that when this one happened, we ain't even gonna talk about this, how God split the sea. That's not even gonna. That's gonna be a child's, trick compared to what we about to witness, right? So, but then at the same time, you have still a group of people, even after all of that just happened, they be like, damn, America just got blown up? Oh, man, damn, what? I want to go back to America. Dang, why is America gone, right? They going to be saddened. And what it says, I will purge out from you the rebels and them that transgress against me. I will bring them forth out of the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Israel. And ye shall know that I am the Yahweh. So that's why it's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth, right? Like it says in Revelation, because after you witness this greatest miracle ever, you're getting saved in a nick of time. And what we mean by a nick of time, because the Bible says that, some of us are going to be saved by the skin of our teeth, right? And what does that mean? That means like, if you ever watch a race, people will be running, they trying to, pass the finish line first. Sometimes a person might, stick their chest out or whatever, right? Then, try to lean forward, right? To try to make themselves, cross the finish line first, right? That's what it means by the skin of your teeth. And, the person at the finish line taking a picture to trying to see who got there first, right? That's how it's going to be, right? That close, right? Then you're going to have people like, still want, like I said, still trying to, live in the ways of America. And it says, and shall cast, now back to Matthew 13 and 42, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire, and shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. And it says, we just read that, because after, first you're going to be crying because you're so sad that America got destroyed. And then you're going to want to come into the promised land because you're going to be like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're going to Israel. But then God going to be like, nah, not you. Because you've been complaining the whole time. Ever since I saved your butt from getting blown up over there, or killed over there, or got you out of that FEMA camp that they had you in prison at, you've been complaining the whole time. So now you ain't with us, right? So that's why it's gonna be weeping and gnashing of teeth, because people are gonna realize how much of a fool they were, right? And it says, let's get Jeremiah 5 and 14. Hold on, Hezekiah, go back. I'll give it to you in a little bit, okay? Um, let's go to Jeremiah 5 and 14. Jeremiah 5 and 14 says, Therefore thus said the Lord God of hosts, because ye speak this word, behold, I will make my words in thy mouth fire, and his people wood, and they shall devour them. So that's what we're doing, right? These words are fire that we read in here, right? That's why a lot of people, you try to break down the Bible, or you talking to people about the Bible, especially if they're not spiritual, it burns them up. They eat them up. They can't sit still. Have you ever watched, like, the fire burn? And, it be popping, and, and the stuff that's burning, sometimes if you burn in wood, it might, pop and fizzle and stuff. It can't sit still, right? So a lot of times when you bringing out the word of God, and people are uncomfortable, it makes them feel a certain type of way, because the words is fire, right? It says, therefore thus saith the Lord God of hosts, because ye speak this word, behold, I will make my words in thy mouth fire, and his people wood. So when we come out here and speak this truth, we speak it with fire, right? That's why some people, might not even like the deliverance, right? Because maybe it's not for everybody, right? But that fire, that conviction, right? That's come from the Most High. That's the Spirit of the Lord, right? That that we speak with, right? Then it says, I will make my words in thy mouth fire, and this people would, and it shall devour them, right? Meaning it's gonna, give them that spirit, like how Christ said, that spirit, what's that? Baptized through fire, right? That baptism through the word, right? Because the word is fire, giving you that spiritual baptism, like John the Baptist said, the one that comes behind me comes to baptize thee with fire, right? And that's through the word, because it says, therefore thus saith the Lord God of hosts, because ye speak this word, and this word is the law, statutes, and commandments, everything that the prophet said, everything. I will make my words in your mouth fire, and this people wood, and it shall devour them, right? So that's what this word is powerful, right? Then let's get Daniel 12 and 3. It says, and they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be wise in this thing, right? Like we was reading in Proverbs, we reading about wisdom. And we want to convert our people and bring our people out of these, different ideologies, these different worldly philosophies and ideologies, and bring them back to the truth of the Most High and what He told us to do, right? Because when you read this thing, you'll find out that every nation has a God that they're supposed to follow. And we are a nation, and our God is the Most High God, Yahweh. He gave us that He wanted us to follow. And every other nation got who they supposed to follow, right? And we can read that, and we have read that, right? So we got to come back to what He wants us to do. That's why it says, and they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to each one teach one, bring our people back to the fold, right? Revelation, and then it says, Matthew 14 and 43. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their fathers. Who have ears to hear, let him hear. Right? Let's get Revelation 2 and 26, right? So Revelation 2 and 26 says, he that overcometh, he that overcometh and keep my works unto the end, right? Overcometh, right? Because we read earlier about, well, not earlier, but we was reading that, you must endure to the end to be saved. So you have to overcome these different these different things that happen in life, right? And stay with the faith, keep the faith, right? And it says, he that overcometh and keep my works unto the end, so the end may be rather, you land in that little casket, or you see that black man by the name of the Mashiach Yahushua himself come back with the millions and millions of the angels with him and put his feet on the ground. That's the end, right? It says, he that overcometh he that overcome and keep my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. That's the blessings that we're going to have. We're going to have power, dominion over these nations, right? And he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And meaning we're going to have strict control over these people, right? Strict rule, right? We're going to be very authoritative rule over these people. He should rule them with a iron, and as vessels of potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I receive of my Father. So when they get out of line in that authoritative rule that we're going to have over these nations, we are going to break them into pieces to put them back in line whenever they get out of place, right? That's the power the Most High has given us, right? That's the promise, right? You ask one of those little Edomites, do you want power over the nations? And they'll probably say no. Why? Because currently they already do have power over the nations. These people are the most safest people on the planet. They can go anywhere on this planet and be safe, right? Go anywhere to the little remote islands in the Pacific and be alright, right? But that's coming to an end. Let's get Revelation 8 and 12. And it says, and the fourth angel sound, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, as the third part of them were darkened, and the day shone not for the third part of it, and the night was likewise, right? So it's talking about wisdom and understanding, right? So, and for a long time, our wisdom, our knowledge was darkened, was taken from us. When we were taken into those cargo slave ships and brought over here to America and elsewhere and scattered throughout the world, like it said here, it said, where it happened? Like I said here in 12, it says the fourth angel sound, and the third part of the sun was smitten, talking about our wisdom and our knowledge. Our wisdom, and the third part of the moon was smitten, talking about our knowledge. Then it says, and the third part of the stars was smitten, talking about our people even losing this understanding, because the stars is a representation of the Israelites. It's not talking about the celestial bodies up there, right? Because understanding Revelation is written in, parabolically and metaphors, right? So it says, so our understanding was, stricken from us because we weren't allowed to read in slavery. We weren't allowed to have, do certain things, right? Or cling to our culture. When we got off those slave ships, we couldn't keep our names. We couldn't keep our language, right? So over time and decades, that knowledge of who we are became weakened and dim. That light, that sun, that moon, that wisdom, that knowledge became dim, right? And you have people like Harriet Tubman, who, says that her family's come from the Ashanti tribe. So she and a few others, right, they had the knowledge and understanding that they, that they were Israelites, right? And because it says right here, the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. So a third part of the stars, meaning a portion of the Israelites were, you know, we lost that information, and you know, and we were smitten. So, and who's that third part? You know, because during this time too, like in Judea, the tribes that were left in Israel at that time, because the 10 tribes was already gone. You know, they was already over here and over there, right? So but during this time, you had the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, and the tribe of Levi, right? So then you had like a sprinkle of, you know, Asher and Manasseh, and you know, maybe a few leftovers from the other tribes, but it was predominantly Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? So that's the third. And then of course we went into slavery to Americas, so we lost that information because we wasn't allowed to keep our culture, right? The Bible's a historical book, right? It's not anything else. It's our history book and our law book, right? As we have been reading, we have been reading history, you know? We haven't read anything hocus pocus or nothing like that, right? We're reading history. What else we got? Again, the kingdom of heaven is like, so again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a treasure that is hid in a field, in which then a man had found, and he hid it, and for the joy thereof settle all that he go sell all that he have, and buy that field. So that's what this truth is like. The truth is like, once you find this truth, everything else you thought was cool, you got to leave that alone. You're like, you know what? I thought this was the way, but no, this is the truth. You know, like, it ain't nothing better than this, right? I'm willing to give everything up for this, right? And that's what it's saying. And that's what you got to be like. And it says, again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who when he had found one pearl of a great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that is cast into the sea and gathered of all kind, which when it was full, he drew the shore and sat and gathered the good vessel and cast the bad away. So it's like the kingdom of heaven is like basically saying this knowledge, this wisdom, this understanding is so precious, so, you know, wonderful to have, that it makes you want to throw away all false ways, right? You know, that's why it's important to have a strong foundation, right? That's why, you know, the Mashiach Yahushua started off talking about having a foundation, being on solid ground, right? Not being shaky and trying to mix this religion with this religion. Well, I like this part. I like what the Buddhists is doing over there. And I like what the Muslims is doing over there. So I'm going to mix it all together. No, that's not how you do it. That's not a solid foundation, right? And then it says, in the kingdom of heaven, okay, then which when it was full, and drew to shore and sat down and gathered the good unto the vessel, but cast the bad away. So it be at the end of the world, the angels should come forth and serve the wicked from the and sever the wicked from amongst the just. So you got to get rid of some of these people, right? A lot of these people, and cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be welling and gnashing of teeth, because people are gonna be like, what? as they fading away in the fire, right? They're gonna be like, what? Burning away in the fire. Because a lot of people think that they doing the righteous thing. You know, they go to church, they got their little, you know, favorite Sunday outfit that they like to wear and all that stuff, you know. They got their own little assigned seat in the pews, you know, at the church. You know, pastor know their first name, know all their children, so they think they cool, right? You know, you got a lot of pastors that think because they got a church that's filled up with people and everybody showing up and all that stuff that everything's gonna be, you know, everything's cool, right? But it says, and sever the wicked from among the just, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire, and there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said unto them, have ye understood all these things? And they say unto him, yea, Lord. It says, then said unto them, therefore every scribe which is instructed unto the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, which bring forth out his treasured things new and old. And it came to pass that when Jesus finished these parables, he departed hence, and when he was come to his own country, he taught them in their synagogues, and so much that they were astonished and said, whence hath this man wisdom and these mighty works? So they like, you know, so he went back to the crib teaching the people, and they're like, dang, this guy's like real wise, like, you know, who's this guy, right? And it says, and then they like, is this not the carpenter's son? Is this not is not his mother Mary, and his brethren James and Joseph and Simon and Judas, right? So, and this verse cut the whole, you know, Jesus just magically appearing in Mary's stomach and all that stuff. Because this verse just tells you he had brothers and sisters. Joseph is his father, right? So the people knew this in his hometown, because it started off told you that he went back to his hometown, he was teaching, and then the people who was recognizing him like, oh dang, okay, he doing all this cold stuff. Like, hold on, he look familiar. Is that little Yahushua that used to be over there with Joseph and over there doing carpenter stuff? So Jesus had an earthly father, like we all have earthly fathers. Like the wisest man in the Bible told us, King Solomon said, no king, and Jesus is a king, right? No king have no other birth that came on this earth, but through intercourse, right? So that's how he came here. So it says, and when he come into his own country, meaning back at his own house, back in his own city, he taught them in their synagogues, in so much that they were astonished and said, whence has this man this wisdom and these mighty works? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is this not his mother? You know, because the carpenter's son is Joseph. It says, and his mother Mary. You're like, that's Joseph and Mary boy over there, right? Then it says, and his brethren, James, Joas, and Simon and Judas, right? And his sisters. And they are not all with us. You're like, man, I know all these people. I know this guy family. So now the hate is coming in, right? We all know this, right? You know, there's no such thing as hometown heroes. You can't be in your hometown and be great, because people know you. They be like, hold on, I know this person. I went to school with this guy, right? Who this person think they is? So it's like, it says, and his sisters, are they not all with us? Like, man, we know his whole family. I know his sister, I know his brothers, all these people, right? It says, whence then have this man all these things? Like, so who does nigga think he is? Right? What did Stephen say on Django? Like, master, who this nigga on this day? Right? Who this man think he doing all this, you know, talking all this good stuff, doing miracles, healing people? Like, we know you, dude. Like, we know your dad and your sister, your brothers, everybody, right? That's what they are. Just putting out hate, right? Then it says, and they were offended in him. Meaning they were offended, because that's how hate be, right? They was offended. They hated Jesus. And he was supposed to be one of their own. He came from the same city, right? They hated because when you read the story when Jesus first was getting up with his disciples, and it's like, oh yeah, one of the disciples was telling him, like, hey, look, here he come now. This is Jesus that I was telling you about from Galilee. And then I think it was Thomas, I believe, or Timothy, one of them. I gotta look at it again, but they was like, can any good thing come from Galilee? Like what do you like? You talk like you basically said, like, you sure this is the man? Because Galilee, that's a rough city. That's a ghetto. That's a projects. That's the hood. Like, what good stuff is coming out of Galilee, right? So this is what he has to deal with. So these people, they living in a society, in a ghetto, in a project where they looking at how their society is. So now you got this man that's from the same neighborhood as them, and he's doing things. So they hating on it. And it says, and they were offended in him. But Jesus said unto them, a prophet is not without honor and save in his own house, in his own country, and in his own house. Meaning, you can go in, and we know how it is, right? You can go anywhere and be accepted by people, but not here. Like a lot of people, especially in the music game, people leave Chicago all the time and go to other cities to become popular because they say Chicago got too much hate. You can't get on in the music game because it's too much hate. A lot of people often got to leave the city to become popular. So Jesus is saying the same thing. It's like, he said, there's no prophet in his own house. Meaning, people that know you or feel like they know you or grew up around you, they always going to look at you as that same person they thought who they grew up around you about. So they're not gonna have that same respect for you, like, versus if you go elsewhere, and then then people are gonna recognize your wisdom and your teaching. But with Jesus, they're looking at Jesus like, who is this? Like, really? Like, nigga, we know your whole family, and you coming with this nigga? You think you smart, nigga? Nigga, you think you smart? Hey, what's that? I can't think of that movie though. But he like, you think you smart? When I was it's a Chris Rock joke, I think. Chris Rock like, okay, you think you smart? Alright, well, tell me this: can you kick my ass? Right? So that's what type of stuff he was dealing with. So then, where we at? Then it says, and they were offended in him, but Jesus said unto them, a prophet is not without honor save in his own country and his own house. And he did not many works there because their unbelief. So he's like, you know what? Because y'all hating on me, I came back to my hometown because I'm going around, Israel doing things. So let me go back to the crib, show them how I live, right? And let me go back to the crib and fix up where I live at. But you have haters oftentimes. You have people that don't want to see you do great. So when they see Jesus come back, and they like, hold on, who's this Yahweh Shai dude? This is Joseph's son. Like, he's supposed to be carpenters. Like, don't this dude still owe me a chair? Right? He's supposed to be finished building my porch right now. Right? Like, what are you doing? Right? That's how they was looking at him. Right? So, chapter 14. And it says, so I wish I could have kept this in one video, but if I had knew I was going to be able to grab them off the bus that quick, I would have just kept it going. But, anyway, chapter 14. At this time, Herod, Toshriot, heard of the fame of Jesus. So this is king of of Israel right now. And Herod was a white man, right? Herod was not like us, even though he was the king of the Jews. But when you get into the history, the Romans put in a puppet government over Israel, and they put their main man Herod in place. So Herod was the acting king of Israel, right? But he was a Edomite. He was a white guy, right? And so it says, he heard the fame of Jesus and said unto his servants, this is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore the mighty works do show forth themselves in him, right? So now, again, we kind of covered this in the last time we did this, right? Because we understand regeneration, or how people say reincarnation, right? So in our custom, we understand regeneration. So at this point in time, John the Baptist, he was killed, right? So they was thinking like, well, maybe Jesus is in the spirit of John the Baptist because he's doing all this stuff, right? But then we read too before that John the Baptist is actually Elijah in the spirit, right? Because we regenerate, like we, I did a video where I talked about, what happens to us after we die. We go over, what the Bible say about death, right? And life, right? And all that. So we regenerate, right? So John the Baptist was actually Elijah. And, but so Herod is thinking that, Jesus is doing all this, miracles and stuff. He's like, well, maybe the spirit of John the Baptist is in him, right? Because he just killed John the Baptist. So anyway, says, for Herod had laid hold of John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. So his brother ended up messing with his other brother's wife, right? So John the Baptist, being a righteous man, was like, that's kind of foul. You messing with this man's wife. That's your brother. So, and of course, the powers that be didn't like John the Baptist, coming at them and putting their little sexual life, business out there for the whole public to see. So they arrested John the Baptist and they killed him, right? So, for Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. For John said unto him, it is not lawful for thee to have her. So John was like, dude, you can't have your brother's wife. That's sick, right? Don't mess with your brother's wife. And we shouldn't be messing with our brother's wives, right? And it says, for John said unto him that it is not lawful for thee to have her. Then when he would not put him, then he would have to put him to death. He feared the multitude because they counted him as a prophet. So, because John was a big deal back then. Everybody loved John. So, he arrested John. He didn't want to kill him because the people, like I said, John was a big deal. And he knew if he had to kill John, it probably would have been a riot, right? So, but it gets deep. So it says, for John, okay, but when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod, whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, give me here John's head on the charger. So her mother, which was out here being a nasty little stinky whore, having sex with her husband's brother, and then John the Baptist, was putting it on blast, talking about how she's sleeping with her husband's brother, and her brother is sleeping with his brother's wife. So John was talking about it. Then, John is a big deal in Israel. So if he's speaking about it, then that means everybody's going to find out about it. So they have to arrest him. So now they got him arrested. So a girl's like, you know what? Arresting him is not cool. Just kill him also, right? So she wanted her daughter to tell the king that to kill John the Baptist, right? So and the king was sorry, and nevertheless for the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given to her, and he sent and beheaded John in prison. So he didn't want to do it, but you gotta keep your word. He gave his word, like whatever you want, I'm gonna do it. Just so happened that's what she wanted, so he had to keep his word. So they killed John the Baptist. And his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. Little sick people. I think about it, and when I read this, I'm trying to envision, like, is it like on a little thing and it got it covered, so then you pull it off and it's like a head on a tray or something? That's crazy, right? But it's sick. But people crazy back then, and they're crazy now. So I'm just picturing like a little teenage girl, young woman, walking with this little tray with John the Baptist's head, bringing it to her mother for her mother to look at it. That's crazy. Then yeah, it's just something, I don't know. That's just what I be wondering. I'm like, how did it actually? Yeah, but and his disciples came and took the body and buried it, and went and told Jesus. And when Jesus heard of it, he departed hence by ship unto a desert place, apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the city. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion towards them, and he healed the sick. Right. So again, we're kind of like 14 is kind of giving a backstory to like from the time that John the Baptist was killed, and then and Jesus was doing certain things. So like 13 was you can almost say it's like present in that time. Then 14 is kind of giving you a backstory of what of something that Jesus was doing. And the reason why we know that is because and we know that John the Baptist was dead in 13, and then how 14 starts off that that John was dead, so then it goes into verse 3. Then from verse 3, that's when it jumps into a backstory from when Jesus first found out the death of John. But in 13, it already has taken place. So, just, little things that, when you read in the Bible, certain things that when you get familiar with, the, what they call textual criticism, and comparing different manuscripts and seeing how it was written down by the scribes and all that stuff, then you can see how, that, okay, this is a backstory. Okay, now we back in the present. Okay, they're giving me another backstory, right? So yeah, this is a backstory. When during the time when Jesus first found out about John dying. So when Jesus heard of it, he departed hence from the ship into the desert place apart. When the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the city. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion towards them, and he healed the sick. And when it was evening, the disciples came to him, saying, "The desert, this is a desert place, and the time is past, and send the multitude away." So they were like in a little hot area, right? And he was like, "Look, it's getting kind of late. Got a lot of people out here. This is we're kind of like in the desert." Then So trying to send the people away, because people been out there all day hungry, right? And it says, and then it says, and when time, and the time is now past, and send the multitude away that they may go into the village and buy themselves some victual, like just send the people away so they can go back into town, buy them something to eat. They can probably go, you know, get something to eat, right? Then it says, but Jesus said unto them, they need not depart. Give me ye them to eat. Give me them to eat. And they said unto him, we have but 5 breads and 2 fish. And he said, bring them hither to me. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and brake and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did eat all, and they all eat and were filled. And they looked up, and they took up the fragments that remained, the 12 baskets full, that they had eaten, were about 5,000 men, beside women and children. So Jesus was able to feed the people, right? And it says, and straight away Jesus constrained the disciples to get in the ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent the multitude, here, sit down over there. And when he sent the multitude away, when he had sent the multitude away, they went up to the mountains apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was alone, and the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with the waves, and the winds was contrary. So they out to see the boat and all that stuff. The waves was kind of choppy, all that stuff, right? In the fourth watch, in the fourth watch of night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a spirit." They cried out of fear, right? So so Jesus had told the disciples to get on the boat, I'm gonna meet y'all, I'm gonna make sure, everything is straight back here. Then, he went off to pray a little bit. So then now he's walking to go meet him, So, but they see him coming across the water. He's walking on water, right? So it says, but when he had sent the multitude away, jump down to 25. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went into them on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It's a spirit," and they cried out of fear. Because that is if you see somebody walking on water, that will be a crazy thing. That will be a scary thing to see. But straight away Jesus spake unto them, saying, "Be a good cheer. It is I, be not afraid." You going back in the living room? Okay. It says, "It is I, be not afraid." So Jesus is like, "It's me." You know what I'm saying? And it says, and Peter answered him and said, "Adawan, if it be thou, bid me to come unto thee on the water." And he said, "Come." And Peter come down out of the ship, and he walked on water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink. And he cried, saying, "Adawan, save me!" Right? So, like I said, so Peter, like, all right, okay, let me go out there. So he's doing this thing, go out on the water, but then the wind is blowing, the waves and everything is kicking up. So he gets scared. So he end up, falling into the water, right? Then it says, and immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when thou were come unto the ship, the wind ceased. And when they come into the ship, the wind ceased. And they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, of a truth thou art the Son of God. So when they saw him walking on water, like, dang, this is like really amazing. This man is really the Son of God. And when they were gone over, they came into the land of Gennesaret, whatever, the Gennesaret, and the men of the place had knowledge of him, and they sent out unto all the country round about, and brought unto him all that were diseased, and they brought to him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched were made perfect and made perfectly whole. Right. So they was just because a lot, like, we read about the lady that just touched the hem of his garment and she was healed, right? And the hem of his garment would be like what we would call here these little fringes I got hanging on the end of my shirt, right? And but this is of course a little more modernized, right? Here's what it looked a little different, right? So it wasn't just that one woman that had a bad menstrual cycle, uncontrollable menstrual cycle, but it's right here we see that it was multitude of people that was just made whole, made perfectly whole just by touching the hems of his garment. That's how much power he had, and that's how much faith they had, right? So, so yeah, we gotta have that same type of faith and that same type of, belief that he can, change our situation, right? And we gotta keep the statutes and commandments in the faith, right? They go hand in hand, like James said. Christ's little brother James said, faith without works is dead. Show me your faith and I'll show you my works, right? That's what he said. That's Christ's little brother. They grew up in a household together, so, he know a little something, right? So, with that, I'm going to say shalom, peace. Like I said, I wish I could have put this all in one video, but if I'd have knew the bus was going to come as quick as it did, I would have kept it to one video. But I'm gonna say shalom, peace. Hopefully that was edifying, and we're gonna continue on in this book of Matthew, because we're gonna read the whole thing. All right. Of course we're skipping around because we're talking about everything. We're talking about getting to biblical lessons. We're getting into end time prophecies. Current events, all that cool stuff, right? So yeah, how it go. Check us out. Covenant of the Zealots, right? All that. YouTube. Like and subscribe. Of course. Peace. Shalom. Till next time. I'm out.